So with our lovely Miss T, ready cuteness? We're gonna warm up with our usual, do some lovely find its to get in the groove. Ready? Tuna, come. Nice job. So I wanted to warm up with Miss T, working a little bit with some, again, some lovely find its, and then work from those find its some recalls. So Tuna, come. So a couple great ways to practice some recall. Obviously, in general, in the home is one of the easiest. In your yard, even if it's fenced, you may find that letting them practice on a longer training leash to be very helpful too. So that way, if your puppy does happen to get distracted or is sometimes trying to do the keep away game, doesn't mean they're going to get in trouble with you reining them in or pulling them in like a big fish. No pun intended there. But that way, if they're always using gear as the only way to work or pay attention, the gear is just there for safety reasons. And for if, let's say, she were to get so distracted, she wouldn't be able to come back from that. Not so we can like rein her in and pull her along on our way. So with working these find its, then from here we'd go again, Tuna, come. And she's like a hairball. That was a little distracting. Is it delicious? Good job. So we'd want to practice sometimes having it be, again, beneficial to move away from the handler and then come back into your bubble. So sometimes you're not always fast enough to call them, but they're heading your way. Still capture and feed for those great moments. So for Miss Lovely, right now we're doing these little find its. And then Tuna, come. Yes, nice job. So you can, again, work recalls from the environment. So let's say your puppy is a little distracted, you have them off doing something in the yard and you ask them to check in. Just make sure that your recalls are not the end of the game. So I know sorry, I'm gonna tickle, my allergies are sometimes a little bit acting up. So if your babes are not doing so well with recalls, remember to pay attention to those recall rules. So typically I'd recommend don't make recalls the end of the game or the end of fun. So if, let's say, calling them into the house becomes the end of fun, then next time you call them, they may not come when called from the yard. So the other one too is don't pair it with something scary and don't scold them, even if they've done the silliest thing ever and they finally come to you, because they're not going to realize you're mad because of all the things they did prior. They're going to think you're mad because of them coming to you in the first place. So we don't want to ruin our recall by making it negative or the end of something. So again, we're going to do another little find it. And then from here, we could do again, Tuna, come. And then feed the lovely lady as she meanders on over. Good job. So Miss T is also going through her first heat cycle. So I know for a lot of folks, they are trying to let their puppies at times fully mature before altering, because there have been some really nice studies showing that it allows for their whole skeletal development, ligaments, but also brain. To be fully done growing and developing with those sex hormones. Those also will affect their bone density and lots of other topics. So if you didn't have the chance to hold off, and again, you can always do what makes you and your vet comfortable, but the concept of altering as soon as possible to alleviate behavioral problems has actually typically the opposite effect. So there's been more findings now that when dogs are altered young, and Rocky says, worst day of my life, why aren't you loving me? I'm going to toss him a couple little find its. So the benefit of doing a spay or neuter later in life, it allows your babe to be fully done developing before the sex hormones get taken away. So remember that they're not just for procreation. And I'm not saying that we're going to be making more baby puppies because there's already a lot of pupperoos that need homes. But for a lot of dogs, altering really young affects behavioral, skeletal, and a lot of other things down the road. So with Miss T, even though she's in heat, she can still be functional. There could be moments though, because of it, she could feel a little bit more off or not as functional in the sense of focus work. So just play it by ear when you're practicing with her. The heat cycle for her to return back to her normal level of hormones will take about 3 months. So if you're thinking about getting her altered at some point with your vet, just let them know when she went into season, so that way they can have a better game plan as to when it would be safe to potentially schedule that surgery if that's what you're going for the lovely lady. So, and of course, the lovely men are all trying to wrestle together. Ready? Find it. They're like, maybe we should just wrestle. You wild monkeys. And of course, it's always like when I'm filming is when the boys try to go right into WrestleMania. So He says, worst day of my life, my friend is too far away. And of course they're trying to wrestle through the fencing, which is fine, because I have to be sure that when we're doing WrestleMania, it's when I'm there and watching as well. So ready, find it. So we got some good noise distractions. You know, it's very typical. Dogs will sometimes woo-woo when they want something. So obviously having the boys doing their thing in the distance and then having Miss T still be functional is quite lovely. Because in the beginning, when there was some noises or someone woo-wooing, she'd kind of have a little bit of a harder time. So, but I'm going to do another little find it just to keep Mr. Handsome over here a little busy. Oops, sorry, Miss T, didn't mean to bump into you. I was backing up and then bumped right into her. So when working with these recalls, remember you could do find it's, and then from there, do your little come when called. If again, you're blabbing like me and you don't always get to say your slogan, not the end of the world, just capture the moment they're successful and moving into your space. So another option is to now also work with, let's say, for example, a sit. You could do a down. You could try a standing position. Have them wait, and then when you're ready, Tuna, come and work. She's like, how about here? And then work those lovely recalls. So just like I mentioned earlier with Mr. A, and sometimes I do a couple find it's just to keep her busy while I'm blabbing, is that with Mr. A, he was working some weights in the beginning just to try to show, but then he was really more so working with stay. So again, for Miss T, if I'm going to work again one of these little sits, ready, sit. She's like, but lady, there's so many wild men singing sweet songs. If I lose her, I might try to regain her focus. See, and then two, if she's feeling uncomfortable in the back end, sitting could be maybe a little bit more, a little awkward. So if there's ever moments where she's not as capable for one behavior versus another, there could be many things going on that's affecting her responses. So if, let's say, sitting still is too hard, we could even do a standing wait. We could tell her wait, have her hold back for a second or two, and then Tuna come, and then have her come into your space. So a couple little things for recall from wait. It could happen in a standing position, a sitting, and a down. Waits can then be used for proper hellos, wait before going to visit somebody. Maybe wait before hopping out of the car, or wait before going and grabbing their food or a toy. So, but if let's say Miss T is having a harder time being stationary, she says, no, I'm okay now, is you can always rotate through those. So again, we're going to tell her to wait, have her hold it for a second or two, and you're working in the beginning just a little bit with duration, and you're already got plenty of distractions, so I need to throw in distance quite yet. So again, Tuna, come. Nice, great job. She's doing beautiful. And then if, let's say, when you're working some lovely recalls, you find that your puppy is getting tired, don't feel you have to do so many reps with anything to the point where they're almost giving up. So remember, it shouldn't turn into like boot camp. It should be fun, easy peasy. So again, if she's going for a little chew, I don't know if you can see her in the camera still, but she went to go grab one of the hooves, just like our previous boy. And for puppies, giving them little breaks, which I know you guys have heard all about in class from Miss T, is that your training sessions, keeping them short and sweet for greater success, really helpful. If you end up keeping them long, you may find you lose them pretty quickly throughout that session. Nice, ready? Find it. Gorgeous. Tuna, come. Nice, great job, Tuna. She's doing a beautiful job. Our boys are still just trying to wrestle through the fence. These wild men. I know Mr. A and Mr. R are becoming very good friends, but sometimes we can't always be playing. So I'm just tossing a few more little snacks for Mr. Handsome, Mr. A. So with Miss T, when practicing, I know right now she might feel a little bit off because she's in season. You may find behaviorally she could be, and again, not to pick on us ladies, but it affects sometimes your feelings in many different places. So sometimes you might feel a little bit more moody or not as comfortable or a little overwhelmed. So if you're finding that she's having some more difficulties in certain bubbles in the home, give her a little bit of a softer setup or a softer bubble, and then take a little break from things she's struggling from, and then build that back into your repertoire as she's getting more comfortable again and back into her usual hormone state. But Miss T is doing a really nice job with some of these find-its with some recalls, and those weights were looking gorgeous as well. So I might try just a couple more just because she's doing so nicely. So we might get another little sit. She's like, maybe. And again, I'll see if she can offer it. So remember when you're asking, you might bust. She's like, I'm hungry. Yes, the cheese. So again, we tell her to wait, and then Tuna, come. So remember when asking for a skill or a cue, if your puppy is hesitant, that could be them either saying, I'm unsure, I'm confused, Maybe they're just not feeling it. So I know there's a few things happening for her, but it could be the fact these men are going wild. They want to rumble. But it could be definitely moments where being able to be flexible, which we've discussed in our game plan for training, can be really helpful. So even though I wanted to work weights with some recalls, she's maybe a little bit more fatigued, which is fine. So maybe I'll go into working a little bit with some loose leash walking for a moment, get her up and wiggling. I know Mr. A says, what if we just sing a happy song? He says, I just really want Mr. R to come wrestle with me. And Mr. R is like, I'm not interested today right now. Ready? So Miss T is doing splendid. And I know she's been killing it. The loose leash walking at home and in class. Oh, chewing. Chewing is hard. You got it okay? So, but working our loose leash walking has been going really nicely when I can see you guys practicing in class too. Nice. So I'd almost make it where it's just fun to come into your bubble and work those check-ins. But maybe what we'll do is I'll see if I can give Mr. Handsome a little chew item so he's not quite as lonely. He just keeps telling Rocky he wants to rumble, and Rocky's like, not quite yet, sir. So we'll give Miss T a little break from these lovely weights and recall practice, and then we'll work a few more skills with her in just a second. Great job, Miss T. You're so brilliant. Nice work.